Hello, I'm Rob. Welcome to Rob's Models, and today going to be starting this, which is actually something that turned up just the other day. Brand new tooling, only been out for just over a week, and it is the 1/35 scale Cromwell Mk IV tank, Second World War tank. Done the review on it, hopefully you saw that. Really nice detail in here. It looks like a kit which has got plenty of detail, should be able to actually make a really good tank from it, but at the same time it doesn't look overly complicated in the build process. Must admit straight away, I'm not really an armour builder. I've done a couple of things, I've done a few other bits on 1/35, but not actually a Second World War 1/35 scale tank actually, so put my hands up to that one straight away. So this is what I'm going to be doing. It's quite a nice big hefty box, and if you saw the review of it, some really nice crisply moulded plastic. Only come out in when was it, February 2021, so from here just actually about just over a week ago it turned up. Done the review on it, and I'm looking forward to building this one. There's two versions on there, and basically one has got the little hedge cutter attachments on. Looking through it, I was going to do that version because I thought with a hedge cutter attachment it might be a bit more interesting, but decided to actually go for that first version just because it's got the winter camo on, and actually there's a few more bits going on around the turret. So just to see, that will be that version, which is the 1st Royal Tank Regiment, 7th Armoured Division, British Army Europe, 1944 to 45, whereas the other one was for the Northamptonshire Yeomanry, 11th Armoured Division. So that's what I'm going to be going for. I think with some of the white on there, the winter cam, it should make it quite interesting. So before I open the box up, just going to run through what the plan is for it at least. So I'm going to be painting it actually with MRP paints. These are lacquer paints, used them a few times, but the main one I'm actually going to be using is going to be this one, which is the MRP 349, and that is the SCC number 15 Olive Drab, which is basically anything which is armour, British armour in World War II. It was painted in this, and that's why I'm thinking of going for the winter camo one, because that white was whitewashed on, just so it's a bit of variation. Whereas your German armour has got 3 shades, 4 if you include your primer. British stuff just basically got the olive drab all over, not much more. I've also got the gunmetal, which I'll probably be using that for the tracks. That's MRP 149. But before I actually put those down, or whilst I'm putting those down, I've also got, needs a bit of a shake up, but MRP 29 Dark Rust. So some areas where I'm going to be doing a bit of chipping on there, I'm thinking, and a few scrapes, I'll put down a bit of this first, and then take some of that paint off so it looks like it's sort of gone down to the metal. Something I read a while back said that often if something's going to scrape through on a tank, it doesn't scrape through down to the primer coat, it goes straight down. You know, if something's enough to scratch the paint off, it won't leave the primer on, it will go straight down to the steel, which will rust quite quick. So that's the plan with that one. Put down the rust before putting on that and do a bit of scratching off. And for the actual snow, it looks like on here it's just done on the turret, but then the artwork, when I've done a bit of research, mainly on the turret but on the sides, basically what they did by the seam of things was the crew would just get some whitewash and just slap a bit of white paint on there so it didn't stand out so much in the snow. So I've got a few options for that. I was thinking maybe I've got some of the MRP white. That's actually not much of that left actually. I was used that for a Saturn V, and that used pretty much most of that, but there's a little bit in the bottom there. That might be a little bit too white, so I also have some light grey MRP 201. Apparently it's a 3-tone camouflage for the SU-33, but my thinking is it's more of a grey white. Or I might just do something like Vallejo, and for example this one here, this is just their plain 001 white, but there's you've got a few other sort of not quite so whites, or a bit of this with a little bit of grey something in. And I'm thinking maybe going down for more for this route, because where that was basically whitewashed on, it was going to come off a lot, so I might paint that on and then basically scratch it back off again over the more solid, harder MRP paints anyway. So that's possibly the plan. That's the route that I'm going for, and no doubt I will chop and change that as we go. So that is the plan for this. So let's get the box open and start cutting sprues. As I say, if you haven't seen that, I did do a review just last week where I've gone through, and that included the high sort of like, you know, took pictures of the sprues afterwards and embedded that within the review as I normally do. So we won't go through that too much, we'll just crack on with things. No doubt as we go through you'll be able to work out what we're doing, so let's just go straight on with number one, which is basically building the chassis up. So first part, I've still got the bags of course opened up when doing the review, so let's find some parts. So F4, that's going to be main part. Actually everything we're just doing on this part is on the F sprue. Let's get rid of those bags and just get this to the side. Now, was actually this very first part when part one was when I had some issues with the little Tiger 1 tank that I did, which was released by Airfix. When was that? In December, just before Christmas actually, come out in December 2020, and I built that in January. No, actually in December, and finished it off in January, I think. And actually, I do recall the very first part I did, which was pretty much the equivalent of this part here, putting the side walls on. One of them didn't fit, and it was quite surprising for a brand new tooling, and so new that there was actually still release agents on some of the parts. I should have cleaned it off, but I gave it a wipe, forgot about it, and to be honest, the paint and the primer and everything all went down on it fine, so not too sure why people spend all that time and effort cleaning parts sometimes. But we'll get this off. But yeah, one of those side bits didn't quite fit, and I had to I had to sand down one of the parts to get it to fit in. And we want an F3. But we're looking at that part, we have got some nice sort of detail on there, moulded in detail. Bit of pipe work and some hatches and some rivets. Now they are quite large, some of those rivets, to be honest, quite large, and I'll probably say uniform, as in you wouldn't probably expect them to be quite so neat. But what's better, I think, is to have them neat like this. Actually, let's take that part off whilst we're here, F5, because then as you're building, as you're painting, as you're weathering, you can then kind of rough it up as you go. I think that's the better way to do it. That's sort of my thinking on this. Now we have got quite a few ejection marks, and they're no flash. I'd be very shocked if we had flash on a kit this new, but no ejection moulds. Well, there are sort of the ejection sort of things. You can see them catching the light, just those sort of circles. Yeah, you can see them there. Sort of like the two main ones, but fortunately they are all on the inside, and as I say that, there's a little bit just catches the light just as the plastic sort of bent a little bit on that side, but I don't think that's going to cause much problem. But actually, as that's the base, we've still got some nice detail going on in there. So just file down the sprue gates. One. I don't think this really... Actually, it's very easy sometimes on parts like these parts to think you don't need to bother, you know, this is internal, there's no internal detail on this kit whatsoever. You can have hatches open, and I am contemplating having hatches open and getting some crew to fill the voids. But it's sometimes quite easy when you think these are just sort of brace parts to not to bother those internal parts, not to bother sanding the tabs off, because you think, well, no one's going to see that. But the problem can arise when they've actually been designed to sort of brace at exactly the right part, and by having tabs on there might just push the ends out at a very small amount, which then ends up giving a few fit issues further down the line when it comes to putting the top on, and you wonder why there's seam lines running around it. It can actually be that those parts inside are just a millimetre too big, or I've got a little tab on the top. Now I'm not saying that they will do, but if something's going to be sitting right on top of that bit and there's a little sprue gate on there, a little tab, that's not going to fit as flush as what you'd want. So then a couple of seconds just with a file now to take off something that actually probably doesn't need to be taken off. Can save a bit more time than having to fill seam lines and wait for filler and putty to dry and then sanding down and those sort of things to fill gaps, and then people moan about the kit not fitting properly, when in actual fact it was actually just a little sprue gate that just needed to be taken down. Some nice sort of details. Nice, they're sort of quite, they are quite stark, the details, they do stand out. The rivets, they're not just sort of quite fine, but we are talking about the big lump of Second World War steel and iron. Check there's no right or wrong way round for those to go in. One of them fitted, they are both F1s. They should be exactly the same, but one just fits a bit tighter than the other. So let's get building. Let's put the first bit of glue on. Actually, as soon as I went to do that, I noticed that there is actually a bit of a gap just where that was sitting in. That would have been quite easy to avoid. No, okay, it just needed to be pushed home. Could have quite easily just put a little bit of the glue on there around and noticed that was just sitting a little bit up. Just again, just by a fraction of a millimetre. This one's a lot more, whereas that one had more of a friction fit. These holes are slightly bigger. Okay, make sure I get these round. I don't want to go and get these on the wrong way round to start off with. Which way is the front? Hopefully that would actually only go one way, because from my point of view that looks pretty much symmetrical. Okay, no, there's that ridge there, that bit's the higher part. That would have been that would have been embarrassing to get that one the wrong way round from the get-go. Okay, now those little tabs should go through. Actually, I'm just going to check, and this is the wrong way round. So I'm making sure, if I was to try to do it the wrong way round, no, it wouldn't go, because that, yeah, just to be sure, there's 6 tabs, that's what's confusing me, 6 tabs going down, but that tab at the back, the rear of those tabs, is slightly wider than the other tabs, just so you have to put it on that way round. But if you weren't, you could imagine, yeah, that wouldn't go. You can imagine someone saying this is far too complicated, and okay, that was nice. That had I don't know if you heard that. That was a nice click as those went through there. It's always nice when you make a model and it it literally sort of like almost, you know, clicks into place, and that one literally did. You know, I am finding that, you know, quite often with, make sure I've got the right one, I shouldn't have just been taking stuff off the sprues. So, come on. Yeah, literally, the tolerances are so nice on there, you can hear them sort of clicking in. So what I would do is I will friction fit all of these parts. That will ensure that they're all square, which is nice. That one's not clicking in quite so much. As I said that, there was a click. So, I mean, I've got to say I'm quite impressed by that. And that will, weirdly, there's no tabs or fittings for that one. I'm always tempted not to glue it, but I won't. So, there we go, we've got that fitted on, and let's just run down the length with the Tamiya extra thin. I'm doing this from the inside to avoid, or hopefully avoid, glue seeping through. And that's why I'm just being a bit more, I haven't got quite so much finesse with that. That's why I'm just literally slapping it on there. Make sure we do the side parts. I will do the outside as well. And those bracing struts going across as well. I'm slapping it right on the join, knowing that the capillary action is actually pulling it round into the join. There we have got some quite large gaps, so as I push together, that makes sure that's all coming together square. Where those tabs come through on the outside part there, I will now just pop a bit. There's quite a few ejection pin marks on here, and part of me is thinking I should get rid of them. However, I'm pretty confident that they're going to be covered up by the wheels. I guess if you're going to be doing one of these with the tracks off, tanks off, maybe it's taken a hit, you might want to just try to tidy up. But surprisingly, obviously it's a large part, so their Airfix have obviously just done it like, okay, we want to make sure that part comes out the moulds. Let's go to town on the ejector pins, pin marks on there. And I will run a bead of extra thin down the length there as well, just that join. Now, on the prototype, I mean, this isn't like we're building an aircraft here where it's, you know, thin aircraft grade aluminium panels. This is actually going to have been done with sheets of roughly cut cast iron, or, you know, not cast iron, steel. You know, I can't remember the thickness. It was, you know, I think about 6-inch thick lumps of steel, which had been, you know, just crudely sort of riveted, welded together. So that should, so if you are going to get some sort of panel lines and not exactly gap, you won't kind of get gaps, but where two bits of steel come together, they would, you know, you would naturally have sort of seam lines in there that you shouldn't be able to actually see through. There shouldn't be a air gap. And this one will just sit on the front. Now this one hasn't got any tabs, like tabs to hold it in place whilst the glue dries. We are just going to have to get it to sit. Just trying to smooth that bits. So it's going to just have to go in those channels. The right way up. But at the moment I've got to say that is fitting nicely. Run a line of glue on each. Now with no literally we're relying on just the glue to dry to hold this in place, and those channels to the combination of pressure of my fingers holding it in those channels whilst the glue dries. That should be fine, and just run a little line over there. And of course, being sort of something that was welded together, we can be, I wouldn't say crude, but we can be you know, it wouldn't have been the finesse that would have gone into it as building an aircraft. You know, getting everything absolutely finely balanced. I'm sure the skill level of the crew wouldn't, you know, the builders wouldn't have been quite up there with the skill level of aircraft manufacturers. Okay, so on to part 3, and this is all these little torsion bars that the wheels are going to be sitting on. And of course, actually, we can see that quite a lot of these injection marks are going to be covered up because there's going to be those side skirts that are going to be going on over. So take these off. So F2 first of all. I'll get this on before I forget, this back plate. There we go, put the rivets on the outside. Well, so let's sand it down first, get some of the sprue gates. I've got to say that the things that do need filing down are quite large, but the parts so far that I've taken off are also quite, you know, quite substantial when it comes to the plastic. You know, there would have been quite a bit of plastic going into that mould, and quite a bit of plastic going down, injected into that part. Right, just going to want to take care to make sure any sprue gates are removed from those end parts. Quite a coarse file there, perhaps I should be using a more finer one. Not quite a friction fit. We'll just hold it with my finger. Like the other one, there's a guide of whereabouts it's got to go, just to get it lined up. I don't know if there's enough friction on there alone to hold it in place. I'll do it on the outside as well. There we go, just give that a moment to dry. But you can see that there's actually there is a gap to this part. Has that got a vent pretty much on the back there. going to file these down properly in a moment, but just whilst that's drying, we'll check how this works. So, first one, actually, we'll come down here. So, there's back of there. Each one of these has So this is each one of these is a G14. We've got 10 of those. There's a pin there on one end, so it's and a little hole there. And on each of these, we've got a little pin there. So that's going to make sure that they all go in, but invisibly, hopefully, that will keep them all at the right angle. So I'm just doing this as a temporary measure. I'll take these back off to fix on. That one isn't fitting down flush. Oh, it might be actually. I haven't filed them down, so I don't know if you can see there. That second one in, it's just not isn't sitting down as flush as the others, but I won't panic just yet. No, it says that to go back to it. No, let's change that one just for the minute. That one is. So what happens, we'll have 5 of those go down there, and then which one will go that side? One of those will go there. There's 2 little. This will glue into here. There's 2 little pins in there just to make sure that locks in, and actually Friction Fit just keeps that in there for now. Of course, we'll be gluing later, but I just want to just check. These all need sanding down. Say Friction Fit, it's only a light Friction Fit. Good enough just to hold that in place. So that's. There's no major pins for it to actually. You're just going to have to follow the channel actually. There's no location pins for it, and it shouldn't actually need it because it will go onto the channel there. So, brilliant. Okay, what are we looking at? That's one side. What I will do though is before gluing this on, and this is what I wanted to check because it's easy to get carried away, is I will actually get those side ones glued on, but not the side skirt. Paint the insides there and the inside of that, and then put that on, and that way that will then have the paint. That all, to be honest, will be fine just being done in the Olive Drab. That's the plan for that. Yeah, that probably would have just been done all Olive Drab. It's not really going to be seen anyway, but it will just be a lot easier than painting it all in and just trying to spray it in there just to make sure we get it all done. And actually what we could even do is actually paint the side walls Olive Drab. Actually the little torsion bars themselves, I think I'm going to do in the gunmetal colour, and that'll just help sort of differentiate them when they're sort of coming through there, and if we're looking, that might just add a little bit of difference on there. So that's the plan. What I'm now going to do is to file the little tabs, not really needed, but I think I will just bring them down. There's just on the sides as well, just a bit of the seam lines, just to make sure we have got them looking all nice and neat. So it's just going to be a bit of filing, so dump all of those out. Now with the display, it's probably just going to be on the flat surface, probably won't be doing it as a diorama, and therefore as it's going to be flat, suspension won't be in operation. That's the problem actually with this one, is I guess with those these pins in there, we'll make sure that all these suspensions and all the tracks are therefore going to be level, That's fine if you're having it sat down, because of course with the way the track is with this, where you've got two options. You can either use the rubber tracks, essentially two big rubber bands that will go around, and I've got to say the moulding on them, as far as comparisons of the moulded detail for the tracks, same. The difference is going to be, of course, the rubber tracks you can't really paint, and the plastic tracks are in sections. You've got some loose individual links, and then you've also got some longer sections that go across the top and bottom, which are perfectly flat and a straight line. And again, that's probably fine if it's just going to be an opposed, on a flat level ground. But if you're a diorama, or you're going to be doing it in a way that's you're wanting it to be a bit more in motion, but not on display, so to speak, then having it completely flat and level tracks might not be quite what you're looking for. And in that case, what you might want to do is remove those side pins for one of those, so those can be angled a little bit different. So if you know it's going over a rock or something, that one is going to be angled up a little bit more, and you're then going to need to work out how you're going to make that track not be straight line and actually follow the contours around the surface it's driving over. I will be keeping it simple. So just going to put a bit of the olive drab on the inside parts, just to get that on there, and the actual torsion bar suspension parts, going to put on a bit of the gunmetal. Both are going to be MRPs. Not really going to bother priming these bits because they're only going to be small, not really going to be seen, they're a bit tucked away. So that should be fine, just to have maybe one or two coats of that. So just going to get a few more bits set up and start getting some paint on this model.